Here.
Commissioner Gordon Gray, Commissioner Onan,
Here.
Commissioner Lee,
Here.
Chair Stinger.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We have agendas in front of us. Are there any changes, requests, deletions? Then we'll proceed. First order is oral communications, and I have one card from Help Me Lakshmi Tayebi.
Yeah, that's correct. You can come to the microphone over there, and let's make sure that it's...
There you go.
Great, thank you.
So this is our first time for us. I've just learned about the Human Relations Commission, and I've been in touch with Minka, and my association with her began when we were trying to seek co-sponsorship for one of our events. But nonetheless, we're here to talk about the Celebration of Oneness Festival. I am the Public Information Officer for the Baha'is of Palo Alto, and we felt that it was important to sort of convey the idea behind the Celebration of Oneness Festival and our role and how it relates to the activities of the city of Palo Alto. So we are celebrating the bicentenary of the birth of Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith. And in the spirit of that, we wanted to have a festival based on the principles of unity, the oneness of God, the oneness of religion. So basically the theme is so powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the entire earth. And in light of recent events, the shootings and the natural disasters, it's really a time when we are calling for a time of solidarity and really connecting as humans in support of each other in terms of eliminating racism, trying to close the divides between economic and social divides that we have, in terms of providing opportunities in terms of universal education, removing the gap between gender to promote gender equality. So the Celebration of Oneness is going to be a 2-day event, October 21st and 22nd, where we will have a children's festival that is really geared towards young people to sort of instill those virtues and spiritual values that provide a moral compass for them. In the evening, we are going to celebrate the festival by having a performing arts program that is going to profile a number of the arts organizations within the city of Palo Alto, just to basically highlight the diversity and the eclectic nature of the Palo Alto community. And then we will have an informational session on Sunday morning more about the principles of the faith. And basically, it's really an opportunity for us to get to know the city to know us, and how, as a group, how can we engage within the city of Palo Alto and align ourselves with some of the goals that the city has. We are all about human relations. We are all about connecting people through children's classes. We have junior youth spiritual empowerment programs that really targets middle school kids. It's a really difficult time, but really helping them to engage in community service, whether that is cleaning up a park, whether it's in a foster home, a pet shelter, but basically to empower these kids to know that no matter how small their efforts are, they are really able to make an impact at such an age, and that drives them more as they grow older into providing more of themselves and engaging themselves into community service. So we invite you to come and attend any of these events on October 21st to 22nd, and of course we will come back at your next meeting to give you more details. And at this point, I will let Wafa, chime in.
Hi, I just wanted to add that we really take pride in living in this area with so many people with like-minded beliefs and principles, as exemplified by this commission, which is totally aligned with the principles of the Baha'i faith, and we really appreciate your work.
And one thing I just want to leave with you, we are hosting an art exhibition that we are calling for submissions from the artistic community. We approached the middle schools and the high schools, and we will be exhibiting their art at the Rinconada Library for the month of November. And we are hoping that we will have successive exhibitions. And again, it's on the theme of celebration of oneness. And at the opening of the Palo Alto High School Performing Arts Center, I don't know if any of you had a chance to go, but there's a huge talent of artistic ability that was displayed there. And we are hoping that that will be shown here at this art exhibit as well, because they're extremely talented. So I will just leave that. I don't know if there's a place to post it, but if not, just take a look at it. And we would hope that you would be able to come and view the art exhibit in November sometime.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
See any other cards? So we'll move on to the first order of business, the public hearing, the review of the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report for our CDBGs. And maybe some introductions.
Hi, good evening, Chair Stinger and Commissioners. My name is Eloisa Murillo Garcia. I am the city's senior housing planner, and I have here with me tonight Erin Mockbull, who is our new CDBG staff specialist. So she will be giving you a brief presentation about our annual report.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioner. I'm Erin Mockbull, CDBG Staff Specialist, and I would like to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to provide you a brief overview of the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, known as CAPERS, for the CDBG program. So the report covers the fiscal year for 2017, starting from July 1st, 2016, and ending on June 30th, 2017. So the city has 90 days from the end of the fiscal year, which was June 30th, to submit this report to HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and we plan to submit the final report by September 30th, 2017. The purpose of CAPER is to provide a brief summary of CDBG funds expended and accomplishments made with the CDBG funding during the fiscal year, which was 2017. So I'm going to provide you a brief overview of the CDBG program. So the CDBG program provides annual grants to cities, counties, and states to develop strong communities by providing decent housing, suitable living environment, and expanding economic opportunities, mainly for persons of low and moderate income. The city of Palo Alto also receives annual funding from HUD under the CDBG program. So the activities funded through CDBG must meet one of the three national objectives. A, benefits low and very low income persons. B, helps in either preventing or completely eliminating blight or slums. And C, meet other community needs that are urgent for the low income community. So the activities that the city funded during the fiscal year of 2017 all met all the first objective and benefited low and very low income persons. So this is the summary of this funding allocation which was provided to the city. The total was 754418 for the fiscal year of 2016 and 17. The city has 5 funding categories in which to allocate fund. Number 1, public service; 2, planning and administration; 3, economic development; 4, housing; and 5, public facilities. Per federal regulations, we have a spending cap of 15% on public services of the entitlement grant and actual program income received during the fiscal year. Similarly, the spending cap on planning and administration is 20% on both entitlement and actual program income. And there's no cap on the other 3 categories. So the public service, we work with 5 public service providers during the past fiscal year. The number 1, Life Moves, which provided assistance to 554 homeless individuals at the Opportunity Service Center. Catholic Charities was the second public service provider that assisted 384 seniors in long-term care by providing regular visitation and outreach. 151 persons were provided services through the single room occupancy resident support program, which is run by Palo Alto Housing Corp. That is our third public service provider. And the fourth was YWCA that provided services to 10 people regarding domestic violence. And 99 people had improved access to decent, affordable housing through Silicon Valley Independent Living Center. That was our fifth public service provider. Under the economic development category, the city, in partnership with the Downtown Street team, provided assistance to 31 unemployed individuals in securing jobs, and there were 17 employers that participated in the program. For the planning and administration category, Project Sentinel, with the help of the funding provided by the city through the CDBG program, investigated 16 fair housing complaints and conducted audits to prevent discrimination against the community members. And also, in this category, we provided administrative support to the CDBG program. And this is the multi-family housing rehab. This is a standalone program, Palo Alto Gardens project. It's a landscape renovation project, and there are 152 households and 156 people. All were belonging to low or very low income, and they were benefited from this project. The project helped in reducing water consumption and maintenance needs and enhanced the community. So this was basically a brief overview of the specific accomplishments during the fiscal year across the funding categories. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any about the CDBG program or the report, CAPERS report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Comments?
I wanted to ask about the number of individuals served. Has the number increased over prior years on just an overall basis? And how have the numbers changed when you break it down on a per dollar basis?
Per dollar basis, right?
Are we serving more people overall, or are we serving more people per dollar that we allocate as compared to prior years?
Yeah. Okay. So for like I was telling you, there were 5 public service providers. So we have the year-end reports, and per the year-end reports, the number have actually increased. Just one public service providers, they were a bit, they were behind the goal, but it wasn't a lot. But other than that, the numbers have increased definitely.
I wanted to just ask for some clarification. I know that the last times we talked about CDBG, there was some ambiguity about the funding. So this report, does it pertain to things that have already been accomplished? So this is not the part that's contingent upon what funding we may or may not receive?
No, actually, this was, you're right, this is about the last year program. So, no, it's not, I think you're talking about the contingency plan that we, no, it is not related to that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if I can just add, so I know when we were here last, the commission approved a contingency plan, and the CDBG funding actually ended up being higher than we thought. So everybody was able to to get an increase. So it was good news. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? At least 2 of us were on the CDBG committee. We thank you for your good work and looking forward to doing some more this year.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Yes, Minka is correct. Yes, we do need to open a public hearing. If anybody has any comments.
Should I do that? If you
Yeah.
want to do that, and then you can just wait for a comment and then close.
We do want to have a public hearing. So if there are any comments, may I have them now? Again, I'd like to reiterate my comment. I know that you put a lot of time into this and serve the agencies well, so thank you very much.
Could I
Thank you.
could I ask about how many written comments were received during the review period, the 15-day review period? None. In the past, have we received any comments, or?
Typically, we receive very few comments, but it's not unique to Palo Alto. I mean, we have a pretty good network with our surrounding jurisdictions, and most other jurisdictions receive very little comment.
Okay.
Yeah, we receive more comments during the action plan process, which is when we're putting out applications and people come out and talk about their program. So we receive more comments then. This is, as Aram said, this is our year-end report. So we're just reporting on the accomplishments
Okay.
for the last fiscal year.
Thank you.
Well, if there are no other comments, I'll close the public hearing. Okay, consider it closed.
Thank you.
She might have said it, and I just...
No, I was.
So it'll just be a few minutes while we get the technology set up.
While the technology is getting set up, maybe can I start an introduction just to say that in the process of doing some committee work to support the council resolution on a diverse, supportive, inclusive, and protective community, we became aware of the story of Parath Sharma, and we were really glad that he could come. I'm going to ask Dipali to do a proper introduction when the technology is ready.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Parth Sharma, thank you for coming. This is a very brave thing for you, and we really appreciated your publishing the article and bringing it to our attention. So Parth is a citizen of Palo Alto. He grew up in the elementary, basically in Palo Alto elementary school, middle school, and now he's a senior at Pali High School. So please continue.
Yeah. Oh, sorry about that. My bad. I was born and raised in Palo Alto. I'm a senior at Pali, and I'm the managing editor of the Campanile, which is our high school newspaper. So I wrote an article about the way that I think that Indian people are portrayed in the media today that was published later in a major newspaper. So that goes to basically, so I just want to clarify what I'm talking about today is I'm going to be talking about how the way that I feel that Indian people are portrayed in television and film today, and what I don't like about it, and I mean, what I do like about it, I guess, to some extent. I think there's some things that could be changed. So the first thing is I feel that all Indian people on TV, let's just take a second and think for 5 seconds about an Indian character that we see on TV, you know. So if you've thought of one, they probably fit kind of like the same mold. Like, it's generally pretty formulaic. They kind of have a thick accent. They're kind of nerdy, weak, emasculated to some extent, kind of antisocial, kind of just strange people, you know, very rarely portrayed as like just normal people, which is, you know, what anybody else is today, you know. In fact, so I've compiled a few clips. Obviously, I can't show a whole bunch of stuff, but I've compiled a few video clips from some TV shows that I think are kind of show what I'm saying. And then after that, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I think about those. Oh, shoot. Oh. Yeah. Okay, this is not working for some reason.
Internet?
Oh, I do. Yeah. Oh shoot.
There's a free Palo studio.
This one?
Palo,
This one?
Palo Alto guest.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Just maybe click on something.
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay.
If you go to the top left. It's part in your system preferences.
Oh, shoot.
Change the audio.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh boy.
Do you just want to use the speakers?
Yeah, we can
On
just-
this
laptop
Oh, and just hold it.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can just record it from, we can
Oh, yeah. I
take
don't.
it from, this
break
one is
this,
a little closer
okay.
too, and we can just do it that way.
Okay.
That's no
cool.
problem.
Thanks.
Just increase the volume.
Okay. Is it? Can anybody hear that?
I
Okay.
just did.
Okay.
If you want to play.
Get me down from here. Okay. If you say so. What hurt? It's your fault for sleeping on a door. That is it. You have aroused my ire. Hey, you used to think me. Luke wanted to leave you in a lobby and nothing but your tidy whities. Luke, you're treading on dangerous ground. Ever heard of Garma? I have. It's my favorite topping on a sundae. Not caramel. Karma. The gods said that if you're good, the universe will reward you. But if you are bad, the universe will beat you like a rat.
Okay. So as you can see right off the bat, like this character, pretty much from the start of it, he wakes up and the first thing that he says is, "Great Ganesha, I'm a human samosa," which is like a super weird thing to say. I don't think anybody's ever said that, ever. I don't think, like, I've never said that. I'm never going to say that. My parents are from India and they've never said anything like close to that. And on top of that, this character kind of has like no identity outside of being Indian, which is kind of like the thing that I've noticed about a lot of these characters is that they're just kind of like very one-dimensional, and outside of their ethnicity, they don't really have anything. And there's almost never been like an Indian American character on TV that's like a full character, you know, that goes beyond just like being Indian. Like that's usually just the only thing that they are. They're nothing more, you know. Oh shoot, it's kind of what?
Increase the YouTube volume. Because YouTube.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. Okay. Hold up.
It's Monday. Wait, Saturday. Hello, good family. Who's ready to get their learn on? Oh my. What you wearing? It is my sherwani, only worn on very special occasions. Since my tutor says I am now ready to start school with Emma and Luke, what better day to wear it?
Yeah. So again, like the theme with a lot of these characters is that they're kind of overly nerdy and just obsessed with school. This is what's kind of shown here. Like, first of all, that's like really bizarre that he would just choose to wear like a traditional outfit because he's starting school. So again, he's just kind of nothing more than just a reflection of like being Indian. Like that's all he really is. It's just kind of like playing off of that to get like jokes, you know. It's cool. Like I appreciate comedy. It's not like I don't, but you know, it's just like my issue is that like every single one of these characters is the same. Like, this guy is the same character as Raj on The Big Bang Theory, which is the same character as, like, Baljeet on Phineas and Ferb, which is the same character as, like, Apu on The Simpsons. Like, they're all just the same character over and over again, which is just kind of, like, painful, you know? Like, it would just, like, I'm not anti-humor or anything, that's just my stance. Again, also, this kid has an accent, but in the show he's been living in the US for, like, over a decade, which makes no sense at all. That's really kind of my issues with it, is that a lot of times, like, these Indian characters are just put in a box, which is just, like, being Indian and conforming to, like, a certain set of stereotypes, which is, like, pretty narrow almost always. And they never end up getting the chance to be anything more than that, like, set of things, which is just kind of like accent, nerdy, like, bullied, weak. In fact, there's even this character on another popular Disney show. His entire identity is just, like, being Indian, having a thick accent, and getting bullied. Like he's literally has, like, the show is so self-aware about it that, like, he pretty much just calls himself, like, the kid who gets bullied, like, in a lot of episodes. Like, that's literally just his title. And in this photo, every other kid just wears a normal Halloween costume, but he wears, like, a failed test because he's, like, that obsessed with school, you know, I guess, is the joke there. I mean, it's, like, somewhat funny, but it's just kind of like the issue is that every single character ends up being the same as this guy, which is just kind of a pain to deal with, you know. Because at the end of the day, every single Indian character on TV, except for a select, like, one or two, ends up just conforming to, like, these 5 things, which is, like, having an accent, being a nerd, being weak, antisocial, and being, if they're a man, like, super emasculated. Like, Raj on The Big Bang Theory is just, like, super emasculated. And that's, like, a joke. That's, like, a running joke in the series, you know. And so my issue is that, like, that kind of has, like, some issues in real life, because when I published that article, it got some traction. It got a lot of traction. It got people talking to me. So I thought that the best way to kind of follow this up is to do, like, a series of interviews with people and find out if they felt the same way that I did, because I didn't want to just be, like, somebody who's speaking for a lot of people without taking into account, like, what the group wants or anything, you know. So I did that series of interviews, and I found that the vast majority of Indian Americans at Gunn and Pally agreed with my stance, and that they just very much disliked the way that Indian people are portrayed in the media. They felt that it was very one-dimensional, kind of unfair, and didn't really reflect reality. And, like, I mean, they all understand that, like, stereotypes can be funny, and that's cool, you know. But the problem is that when, like, an entire race is basically only shown a certain way on TV, it's you know, I would be okay with having a few of these characters around if there's other characters who are kind of fully, if you understand, like, the concept of, like, a round character versus, like, a flat character, like a developed character, as opposed to just being kind of like this same, like, formulaic approach no matter what. That's it. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for being so well prepared.
Thanks.
I read the article and had a reaction to it, but it was much more visceral seeing the video clip.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I
Thank
think
you.
that was a really important piece to do.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask for comments, remembering that we have a high school student?
I wanted to ask if you had any sort of additional projects that you are planning on doing along this line.
I'm not totally sure at the moment, but I may publish the interviews a little, like, extend that project a little bit more and then publish them. I think that's something that I'm definitely interested in doing.
And if there's anything that this commission can do to help support their efforts, I'm sure we would.
Not
welcome
entire,
that opportunity. So.
At the moment, I'm trying to build awareness to this issue. That way, I can accomplish something on a large scale. Right now, I'm just I'm really the only person that's kind of going ahead and moving with this cause. But, you know, hopefully, I'm trying to change this.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your efforts, and
thank you.
Let us know how we can support you.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely.
My question is there an Indian Student Association at Pali?
There's not, no.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that would be good to have a group effect,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Definitely, yeah. Thank you.
I wanted to comment that I'm a fan of a lot of shows that are on British television, and what I noticed there is a big difference the way Indian people are portrayed in the United Kingdom. You know, they are doctors and police sergeants and really competent, you know, professional people. And when I see Indian people on American TV, I do, you know, see the stereotypes that you're talking about. So I would just encourage you to maybe get some alternative clips from another country, and maybe even, you know, that makes it even more
Definitely, yeah.
clear, like, here's
Thank
how
you,
we're
yeah.
doing it, and here's how a more, you know, sensitive society is doing it. and
Definitely, yeah.
That might help really bring it home to people.
Thank you, yeah.
I want to echo Commissioner Lee's comments that we would really encourage you to take this as far as you can. I know it's your senior year, and you've got competing interests, but this is a really valuable contribution, and I'd
Thank
like to
you.
see you take it further and come back to us if there's an initiative we can support.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Very professionally done.
Our next speaker is in here. I told her to be here at 7.
Let's try that. Let's move to item number 5, which is planning for an HRC council study session on October 2nd. There's a draft template at our places, which I have now misplaced. And I'd like to walk through that.
Do you want mine?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're talking about the slides?
Yes, the Human Relations Commission study session with City Council.
We'll still on for October 2nd as we speak. And for the new commissioners, we've been canceled or rescheduled 2 to 3 times, so hence the joke.
I was going to say, I think, did we not meet last year?
No, we never even made it last
No, you did not have a study session last year.
The things that we did last year, they don't know about.
That is something if for things of great significance, it might not hurt. That could be part of your discussion tonight. So I would agree that that's a very interesting point. I'd have to look. I thought I saw something from 2013, and then I said to myself, we must have met since 2013. Have you been to a study session?
Yes.
This is yours.
The last time we met, I was still chair, and it was before Greer and Valerie took over leadership.
It was before Greer and Valerie joined the commission.
That was the year before.
Greer was not here.
Oh, Greer may have been.
Greer was there.
Yeah.
So it was, so
Yeah,
it was
we
before,
did it in Councilor Chambers. I think it was,
Yeah. you know, Phil Seth and Dubois
Were new to
were
council.
there, they were
Yeah.
new.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's a strong point, Matty. Don't lose it as we go through the thought process so far. Vice Chair Chen and I have met with the mayor and the vice mayor and went through an outline which they seem to agree with, and that's reflected here. We wanted to begin with some introductions of people and the mission statement, talk about our accomplishments on slide 4, beginning on slide 4. We've begun with our core responsibilities, HISRAP, CDBG, accomplishments that reflect work that the council has directed us to do, and then some accomplishments, the community forums and civic engagement, areas that we may have initiated on our own. So we talk about the community forums, work with healthy cities, liaison work, study sessions at our commission meetings. And we may choose to elaborate here on projects that have come to fruition prior to this past year. And then we begin with looking ahead, and this is the part where we want to lay enough of a groundwork so that we can have a discussion subsequently. We want to talk about our continuing work on the council resolution. That work has stemmed from their statement of values in December of 2016. And then as our committee has met, we've identified and focused our work in two areas. We saw that there are segments of our community where voices are unheard, and there are segments of our community that are confounded by the changing environment. So our work will stem from that in general, and then we also have some initiatives that will take that work forward, communications and gender, two thematic statements that we have for the year going forward. Focusing on the continuing work, we'll remind them of the resolution that they passed. Talk and slide. I've lost track of the count. I think we're at about 3, 6, 9, 10. The work plan for the council resolution. The area where we're going to make recommendations. We'll talk about some new initiatives this year under the thematic statement of communication. That slide is intentionally left blank for now. When we've had our discussion of priorities, we'll fill that slide in before we leave. We also talked about doing some work on gender. And then we'll go into a discussion with the council of where they'd like us to go deeper on the council resolution and on our work plan. Do they have additional themes and expectations that they have for us? So we have about an hour with the council study session.
Yes.
So our hope is to make this maybe a 15-minute presentation. So I'd like to open it up for comment.
I have some comments. One thing I noticed is I think we missed an opportunity to promote that we wrote our new HRC mission. That's actually an accomplishment of ours. So I think that slide should have some sort of, introduction that we kind of reinvented ourselves in light of the changing political climate, both here and nationally. Secondly, I think that the flow is difficult when we get to supporting the council resolution plan because there's a slide, the blank slide, is in between that slide and the gender slide, but gender is part of what we're going to do to support it. So I think that it might be good to move it to be the first thing. So in other words, we're going to look at these areas, and one of the first things we're going to do is gender, so that it's clear that we're already taking action under that initiative. And then finally, I'm not sure it's a great idea to end with all these questions at the end because it sounds like we're not clear on our direction and we're looking for a lot of guidance from council. And I think it would be better to state where we're planning to go and offer them some chance to give us, or some opportunity to give us input, but not be quite so questioning as if we haven't plotted our own course.
I think one of the reasons the subcommittee did that is since it was the council referral, and they were trying to get any feedback the council had to be able to address it in the time period between that meeting and when they hope to bring the full report back to them in December. So that's up to the will of the HRC, but I just wanted to provide some background information from the ad hoc subcommittee that was working on it.
I also, sorry, go ahead, Shelley.
I was going to say, I'm a little bit, I'm not confused, but it might be confusing. So we have, as one of our initiatives for the year is gender and looking at CEDAW. It's also part of the council resolution recommendation. So how are we going to distinguish that when we present to council? Are we going to say it's, we're wearing sort of two hats about this, or what? I'm not sure what the thinking is there.
It's a good observation. I want to highlight it, and I don't want to lose it as part of the council resolution, and I want to highlight it at the same time, so I think we need to just...
Like, what will be different then? What we're proposing to council, and then what we're going to take up as a, as an agenda item for the year, or as a focus? I guess that's what I would want to sort out. Don't have to do it right now, but that would be something.
Yeah, I think we need to carefully construct that. I'd like to have it under the council resolution, but it's going to take more work, so it also needs to be highlighted. Maybe there's a way to reiterate it as a focus of the year if we go forward.
It may not be like fundamental to what we do, but I wonder if adding being a liaison to the police department might be worthwhile to add. Only because we did do the forum a while back. Obviously, like Chief Burns has come in here and spoke a bunch. Former Chief Burns come in here and spoke a bunch of times. Did I miss it? Or?
Yes.
I apologize. Sorry.
It's on slide number 6, page 2 on the bottom. Serve as liaisons to Palo to Mediation, Project Safety Net, Avenidas, and Palo Alto Police Department.
Oh, I totally didn't see. Okay, I saw PAMP in it, and I thought, oh, but thanks to the police department. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
But actually, to take Meddy's point, sorry, I'm getting my teaching hat on now. A better way to I think, present these bullets would be to break them out into sub-bullets and have each organization as a sub-bullet instead of all one long sentence where it's easy to miss some of the organizations.
That's actually what I meant to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can do that. Oh, Mary can do that.
Not going to take credit for what I'm not doing.
Going back to your comment earlier, Mehdi, are there accomplishments that you would like to add from the fiscal year ending with 2015, 2016?
Well, I guess it'd be interesting to go back on the calendar and see if there are big events that were not this year, but were in the gap between when we did the study session last time.
We can look into that. The things that come to mind would be the Vet Summit, the domestic violence, and the first being different together. So we can look at, I don't think I have that with me, but we can look at the larger things and we can slip them in and say, just as a reminder, because all three of those were really significant and kind of was a pivotal year for the HRC as well.
Yeah, because now that I'm thinking about it, our last study session was before we had done the Vet Summit. I remember talking about we were going to do this imminently.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll write notes about that.
I have a comment in terms of the words. There's so many words in one slide, it's hard for people to catch. It's from the beginning, it's just like, what about just give the titles, had the person who presented will give details. And that would be striking and important because it's hard to read. Sometimes it takes time to read.
We'll look at this. They will be getting this that evening, and we will project it. But we'll look at that. I think we definitely do want the commission members who will be assigned a page to not just read the slide, but we also are on such a quick time frame because we want to have the majority of time for feedback that we also don't want commissioners to highly expound on every area as well. So we can definitely go back and see what the happy median is for that. Because I understand what you're saying, it's very text-heavy. I think it is a draft that we just cut it from our accomplishments document, so we can look at recrafting some of the wording.
I think we should have a sub-bullet and then highlight this title and then this little description, and then the person who presents it, describe it in detail.
Well, like I said, I would caution about describing in detail because there's a lot to cover, and there's 9 council members, and there might be significant feedback.
So I was going to ask about that, like in terms of how much of the study session is going to be actually going over what we did as opposed to just providing them a summary that they can read in advance and using the study session more as a discussion venue.
They tend to like the presentation.
Okay.
So I think, heeding, Vice Chair Chen's words, looking back at it and giving them a flavor. A lot of the events that the HRC has done, they are aware of, either they were invited to or they came to or has received some good publicity. So I think looking back at it with that lens, but I hear that the majority of time we do want for comments. So the hope was this is 15, 20 minutes at the most, and there's 45 minutes for the time where the commissioners can interface with the council.
And if there's any information that we want to provide in addition to that 15, 20 minutes, I would recommend that we provide that in writing to them in advance, and they can come having read that. So again, it's not like they're learning about things or being refreshed about it at the meeting.
Yeah. I think because our staff reports go out so far in advance, they used to be just the weekend, and now it's 2 weeks in advance. So we'd have to see if that was possible to give something at places for them to read later, but they have so much to read. I think they like to get just this high-level overview of what the commission is doing, so.
Okay.
That was my sense from the mayor and vice mayor, that we should have it encapsulated in the meeting that the time that we have with them. And I wanted to concur with you also, Vice Chair Chen. I thought about that when I was looking at the draft and skimming through it just now, thinking it's a lot of text. I think we can move some of the text to the word for the speaker.
Yeah.
As a reminder, but make the slides
lighter. On the site, they can read about it.
Yeah, we can provide a portion with speaker notes. So in essence, maybe this becomes the speaker version, and a more bulleted or less words becomes the version that the council sees.
I have another comment in terms of looking ahead, that slide, continuing work, that would include the support in the council resolution. So the slides on the other pages, they actually belong to this page, right? It's like expansion of the resolution. So if you look at this, it looks like scatter. It doesn't have this whole system. Continuing work, the big title is support council resolution. And then with what details you put in, we can do it. It's right now it's like this way and that way. To me, it's kind of not very, that doesn't flow.
I see your point. I was thinking of it when I looked at it as, what are we doing this year? We're doing some continuing work, we're doing some new initiatives as an introduction. Now let me focus on the continuing work and then move on to the new work. But I can see that it has gotten confusing, so we'll take the recommendation and do the resolution as continuing work.
Right.
And then stretch out to additional work that we're taking on this year to show that it stems from the continuing work, but takes a new flavor.
Yeah, we have to make it clear in a slide so we know what belongs to which part.
Yeah, I agree with Vice Chair Chen's comment. I do think the flow is a little off, but also the word communications, well, it's plural in some places and singular in others, but it's not clear what's meant by that. And so I think the slide before it, before the blank slide with communication, doesn't suggest what we're flowing into there. So should communication be one of the 7 areas that we're talking about on the previous slide?
I can see the confusion. That slide is blank until we talk about what our initiatives are for this year. We've talked about on the table, we've talked about bullying, so we'll fill that in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think we have enough to work with yet.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Well, having never attended one of these, what are we expecting from the council? Are they going to say, well, we think that's probably not a good use of the HRC's time, so I wouldn't do X, Y, Z, or
You might get some, you'll get some congratulations for the hard work that
Right.
you've done. You'll
After the
get-
kudos.
You'll get kudos, you'll have some questions of clarification. I think the council resolution will have some comments, but you have to remember there are 9 council members, and they each have their own opinions. So the HRC will have to distinguish. If one council member had an opinion, that's the opinion of one person. But if a significant amount of the council members have a real interest in a certain area, then I think the HRC needs to go back and debrief next month about the study session and say, they seem to have several council members had a real interest in X, Y, and Z. Why don't we discuss that a moment? Is that something we should add into what we're doing, or does it help us focus in what we're already going to do in a little bit of a different way? But I think you have to look at the whole of the opinion, or kind of the sense of the room as we go onward. Unless they specifically take a vote on something or make a specific recommendation to the HRC, which I've not seen them do in that
They would actually
setting.
vote?
I've never seen that. So most of it is just comments, opinions, and thoughts. If they felt really strongly about something, I think then they would look for when that would come up in just a council conversation that they're having, or ask that something be agendized or forwarded to the HRC. But they could say, oh, wow, we have that issue coming up. The HRC should really look at it. Unless they specifically vote and refer it to the HRC, it's just their thinking at that time. But that doesn't mean if 4 or 5 of them say, hey, I'm really interested in having you look at the gender issue a little bit differently. I think that's counsel you should take, but unless it's specifically voted on, that gives it a lot different weight.
Thank you.
Can I ask that over the next few days?
I would like to make some comments and send it to you.
That was what I was going to ask.
Okay.
Read my mind.
And I'd also like to ask if I could have people take responsibility for pages. And I'll ask, this is what I'm going to ask, and you can respond to it. DePauli, could you do the mission statement?
Sure.
Steve, could you do the accomplishments, his rap, and CDBG?
So since I wasn't here for any of those, it'd be able to speak to those.
You will be. By the time we have this, we will have had our first HISREP meeting.
Okay.
But that's up to you. I'm just
Totally
pointing
up
that
to
out.
you. But that was my thought process. I wasn't trying to throw you a flyer.
I think at this point I wouldn't feel comfortable.
Jill, would you?
that.
Makes total sense. Makes total sense. Jill, would you be comfortable taking on the HISREP detail and the CDBG?
Okay, so which slides are those? The
4 and 5.
4 and 5, yes.
One thing that I can take on though is the new initiative gender slide. I mean, maybe Shelley and I do that since we're.
I'm not going to be here.
You're not gonna be here? Okay.
Well, since I had asked Shelley to do it, I really appreciate stepping up, Steve.
Yeah, I
Thank
mean,
you.
since we're
Commissioner
working
Lee.
on CEDAW anyway.
I'll make sure
does
he's
that
well
make sense?
prepared.
Perfect. Teresa, can you take on the accomplishments?
Sure. But may I change the slides to my taste?
We will change the slides. I was going to do the introduction to the vision for the year, the thematic statements for the year, but that slide is changing, so I'm just going to put a question mark by it. Mehdi, you're on the committee for the resolution. Could you take on the work plan? And I'll take on the ongoing work. Jill, when we fill out the communication slide, can you take that?
I'll need some help on that, though. I don't know exactly what we're going to put there. The open
That'll
table-
come after the priority discussion.
Okay.
And then that takes care of it.
These will all be resent out again with specific names, and we will, again, do our best. There'll be a public document, and then there'll be just one with speaker notes. But like I said, we should probably look how many slides and look how much time we have, so if you do veer off the script, that you know how many minutes we have per page. So we'll give that kind of feedback to you when you get the more final document. If you want to make changes, we really need to get it by like next Monday or Tuesday. The slides are reviewed by the city manager before they go to the council, so it has to go through that review process. So if you could look at it quickly over the weekend, that would really be appreciated, and send it to Mary.
Okay, so I just want to make sure, so are we going to get the PowerPoints and be able to modify our slides?
We will send this out to you tomorrow, first thing, and then you could do some modifications, or you can wait till we actually do modifications first thing tomorrow morning. I'll probably do some stripping of the text unless the
Great.
chair wants to take that on.
I think that'd be great to strip it, thank you.
Okay, why don't I strip it first and then send it on to everybody?
So we'll have it tomorrow.
Yes,
Okay, got to work on it soon.
yes.
But then how are we going to merge all these different versions?
With the version, my feeling is, what I'd like to see is that you were just making comment as to the public version. If you want to make your own notes of what you're going to say in your slide, that's for you just to write in the margin and to use that evening. But there will be one just public document that will go forward to the council. So I just want you, once we've stripped it down, to say, hey, that works for me, hey, that doesn't, or what you think about it.
Okay, because I agree with Teresa. There's too much on, even the topics, there's too many topics on the slides. So for example, on one of my slides, I would break up CDBG and Palo Alto mediation because they're completely separate and they shouldn't be smushed on one slide. So I would add a slide, just a really quick, short slide. So
Okay.
everything has its own dedicated slide, because that's a better presentation format.
That's
And
right.
adding the pages doesn't necessarily add time, because
Right.
it helps you to focus on what that topic of the slide is.
That's fine.
And how do I send it to you, the other comments I have in general organization of this?
Well, why don't you wait till
Okay.
this is revamped, and
Okay.
then you make change, because you might make changes that
Okay.
are not warranted once
So-
you get the new version.
New version will be tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
I still think it's going to be crazy. but-
Commissioner Anand, are you comfortable with that, or do you?
No,
Yeah,
I was
well-
muttering to myself, I do think it's going to be a little bit hard to put all these edits together, and so I'm just kind of wondering if we ought to switch, can we use like Google, does Google have slides that you can?
Google Docs you can share with different people, and then, it
think
still
we
remains a one document.
I don't think, I'm just trying to think that you that would be a Brown Act violation.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So
I
your comments would go directly back
Yeah.
to me.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, though, what we should probably do, since we own specific slides, is, like, if I'm going to be, say I insert a new slide and split up the content, I think I should heads up whoever I sent, whether it's Mary or Mika or both, hey, the 2 slides I'm responsible for are now 3. Check what I have here so that Mary or you knows what to import into the master version.
Well, my hope is if that's the will of the whole group, that I will have done that before it gets to you.
Okay. But I love to edit, so there you go.
That is your profession. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah.
And I also thank you. We're under a time crunch just because of the timing of our monthly meetings and the timing of the council study session. So I realize this isn't ideal for putting together a finished document, but if we can draft by committee and edit by commission, I think we'll be fine.
You want to put any deadlines in this?
Yes.
Monday.
What, by when?
Monday.
Monday. Just look at your own pages.
Well, you get a pass because you're not here.
Yes, just what I want to help do.
Great.
Okay.
No, we'll do it later. Okay. We're going to return to item 3, Palo Alto Center Play Update and Request for a Letter of Support for the New American Artist Residency Program. Help me with an introduction.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Can you turn on your microphone?
Oh, sure. All right. So, good evening. My name is Shea Iwasaki, and I am here presenting on behalf of Karen Kinzel, the director of the Palo Alto Art Center. So just a brief introduction of myself. I run the School and Teachers program at the Palo Alto Art Center. So I oversee 2 programs. One of them is Project Look, which is our school field trip program, and this picture is from that. And in addition, I oversee the Cultural Kaleidoscope program, which is a unique Artists in the Schools program where we are aiming to build bridges between the Palo Alto and East Palo Alto communities through the arts. So that entails placing teaching artists in classrooms between Palo Alto and East Palo Alto, in addition to partnering classrooms from both school districts. And they have the same teaching artists and the same school curriculum throughout the school year. And in addition, they get to send buddy letters to their classroom from the neighboring district and go on a few field trips throughout the year where they get to know one another and make art together. And then the program culminates with an exhibition at the Art Center displaying artwork that they've created during the year. And they get to come on a field trip and see their artwork on display and see their buddy classroom one last time for the school year. So that's a little bit about me. But I'm really here to talk to you this evening about 2 projects at the Art Center that we think would be particularly interesting to the HRC. One of them is Play, an exhibition that's opening tomorrow. And another is a program we are currently developing to write a grant proposal that's focused on new Americans. So first of all, we want to make sure that you all have the free opening for this exhibition on your calendars. It's tomorrow evening, and our Friday night at the Art Center events are going to feature mini golf, balloon art, hands-on art activities, and a cash bar. So these are free for you guys to take as well. So a little bit about the exhibition Play. This exhibition really came out of the idea that we all need more play. and that play really benefits people of all ages. So this is our exhibition description for the show, which I'll read. The concept of play is undergoing a renaissance. Whereas once it may have been applied to immature behavior or used to describe the wasting of time, now it is recognized as an essential form of intellectual work both for children and adults, as well as a path to creative productivity and social well-being. And then it continues, animals, including humans, play under the most adverse of circumstances. It is irrepressible. Research shows that consistent playtime fosters empathy, makes us smarter and more adaptable, and builds a framework for complex social behavior. So some of the goals of this exhibition are to explore a variety of ways that contemporary artists are addressing ideas about play within their artwork, to support the creation of new artwork, which is public, temporary, and site-specific, that's inspired by the theme of play and influenced by community participation in the creative process. One of the artworks in the exhibition involves balloons, and so we brought in a lot of volunteers from the community to come and work alongside the artist to help him with his artwork, which I'll show you a picture of a little bit later. Another goal to promote and educate about the creative, intellectual, psychological, and recreational benefits of play for community members of all ages, and doing this through an active series of public engagements, exhibitions, artist residencies, and programs. Also to explore playful artistic processes for K through 5 school children to increase specifically creativity, which is one of the 4 21st century skills. And we do that through our school tour program. And finally, to uncover possible engagement practices around play that could be incorporated into future Art Center programs. So this is just one of the exciting artworks in the exhibition. It's an artwork by Andy Warhol and Billy Kluver called Silver Clouds. And this is art that you can actually play with and engage with in our galleries. And they're essentially just these floating mylar silver balloons. A second piece, this was the piece I mentioned, who the artist involved the community members in helping him blow up all of these balloons. And his piece was site-specific, so it's not this exact picture. But his name's Hans Hemmert, and he's from Germany. And he creates these balloon castles, which are called Luftschloss, I guess, in German. And another one, this is by Nils Volker, who recreated this installation piece in the exhibition. And these are kind of attached to a motor, and they expand and contract on their own in a certain pattern. So the gallery is looking very playful currently. The exhibition involved several partnerships, from the Stanford D School to the Palo Alto Library. This is a tiny list of some of the programs that we are doing in conjunction with the project. A full list is included in these posters that are that describe the exhibition and all of the events and programs that we've created in conjunction with the exhibit as well. So some other partnerships, I mentioned the Stanford D School, the Palo Alto Library. We also are doing some partnerships with the Junior Museum and Zoo and Gen Funera Camp, which is a camp that's, that does a lot of activities that are all based on play. Switching gears to the other program that I wanted to share information with you about. This is an upcoming grant opportunity that the Art Center and the library intend to submit together. And we are planning to submit this grant to the Institute of Museum and Library Services on, and it's a New Americans program essentially. So this grant would support an artist in residence program to complement and expand the library's New American program, which are currently regular programs with the library. So a little overview of the program. This grant is sort of in the process of being created, but we have planned to have an artist residency program That would involve 5 different artists. 4 of them would be working consecutively in their medium that they specialize in, and the final 5th artist would be photo documenting the entire program. And then we would have in the field and in the gallery residencies. Each artist would be on site at the library and at the Art Center doing community engagement activities. Meanwhile, each artist would also have a gallery space where they would work on their own art installation for the final exhibition. And then the exhibition period for each artist would be about 2 months. So some of the goals of this New Americans program are to use art as a way to connect new Americans to the Palo Alto community, to create opportunities for the community to have access to practicing artists and their materials and processes, to promote and foster empathy in young people and adults, to provide chances for the public to explore art as a tool for resiliency. So some of the activities that we would create around this program would be, of course, the Artists in Residency program that I mentioned. We'd also involve our school tours program during the academic year, where school children would come on field trips and they'd visit the Artists Residency. And we would also do family workshops. We do regular public programming, like our free family days, that we would also involve different activities around the New Americans program. VTS tours of the Art Center exhibitions would help build language skills for new American participants. VTS is visual thinking strategies, and it's essentially simple questions that engage viewers of any age with artwork. And then also documentation, which would be the photography component of the program. So some possible artists that we have spoken to and have expressed real interest in the program would be Paz de la Calzada, who is a native from Spain, and this artist essentially creates these nomadic labyrinths with these precisely cut carpets, and they're really for engaging the public, and it's kind of interactive for the public as well, for people to walk through. Another possible artist might be Ala Ebtekar, who, are you familiar? Oh, okay. So apparently he teaches at Stanford, and he has Iranian roots, and so a lot of his artwork kind of involves a lot of his roots as well and heritage. And we've actually shown some of his artworks in the past at the Palo Alto Art Center. So that's sort of the end of my presentation, and I would love to hear from you if you have any suggestions, ideas for possible partners for the New Americans program. And then secondly, if you, the HRC, would write a letter of support that would be a part of our grant proposal as well.
That's all very exciting. Thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Discussion, questions?
Are the artists just, are they supposed to be Palo Alto residents or just local in the general area?
They wouldn't, I don't think they would need to be local in particular, so we would be open to sort of putting our feelers out beyond, but it would be sort of, we'd put a call out, so artists would submit sort of an application of a proposal that they would do for the residents.
Following up the question is,
Yeah.
you said that 2 months the artist will be in his or her studio working on something. So the artist must have his or her own studio in the neighborhood, in the area, so we could participate.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So the point of the artist residence being at the Art Center would be that they would sort of engage any visitors and members of the community to do some artworks that maybe use some of the processes that the artist uses,
Right.
and then their final exhibition or their final installation piece would sort of involve all of the artworks that the community members have made as well.
That sounds very exciting. So even though they're from Spain, from other country, but they work in Palo Alto,
Yes.
in the community with us.
Correct. Yeah.
At the Art Center.
At the Art Center.
Yes.
What criteria would you use to select your artists in residence?
Great question. I think they would have to definitely have ties to addressing ideas of immigration in their artwork, but their proposal would be something new, definitely, that they maybe haven't done before, because they would be creating it at the Art Center. That's as far as I know in terms of criteria. I'm sure there are other criteria we would consider as well. But a panel of the Art Center staff and library staff would be the ones to choose and select final candidates.
Any projects, suggestions, ideas for partners to stick to the script?
Well, I think we should let them know our council resolution of building the community as a diverse, supportive, non-discriminated community.
Great.
So let them know. So when they select, when you select the artists,
Mhm.
they must have the background to fit our goals.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. I agree.
Do you know when you find out about the grant proposal? Or expected to find
Great
out?
question. The grant application has not actually been posted yet. We're very familiar with the IMLS timeline, and they typically post their grant in September, and then this grant period would probably close in December. And then I'm not sure of what the time period when we'd hear back from them, but I think within the new year.
So you expect the program to be probably spring, summer of next year?
Yeah, I think so, if not 1 year later as well. It kind of depends, because our exhibition schedules, we also try and plan, years in advance as well. So I'm not sure exactly where it would fit in with our timeline, but it's flexible.
Thanks.
Question of support, a letter of support. Do I hear any discussion on that?
I think I would be in support of it. I don't think I have any questions about it.
I second the motion, if that's what you're doing.
Is that a motion?
Sure, I move that we authorize the chair to write a letter of support on our behalf.
Do I hear a second?
Does a specific letter need to be approved by the commission, or can we
That-
authorize?
You can authorize the chair to write a letter. I think there is plenty of time in that it is not due till December. So there is some time for a letter to come back. I was more under the impression it was a vote of support. So if there's a specific letter of support, that's something that's, staff can work with the chair and the Arts Center to really see, what they're looking for. I think the real nexus in bringing this to the HRC was the connection to the New Americans Project, and Ruth Ann Garcia from the library was one of the key members of the committee that put together Being Different Together. And the library holds real value in the continued work of the council and the HRC and the community of being a diverse, supportive, inclusive community. They have continued to support the New Americans program, and in the authors they choose for their books of the month have really seen this as one of their callings to be a voice in the community. So I saw a real nexus of the HRC considering lending their support to this project to support not only the event, but to support the library's continued work and the excitement of, it's kind of this explosion. The council's talking about this, the libraries, the HRC, the Arts Center. For years, the Mayfet theme has been about inclusion, and the Children's Theater have used books in the school that talk about inclusion. So I think it's kind of a culmination of the city in different areas working together to showcase the voices of immigrants in our community and to show that it is a supportive and inclusive community. So what you do with that is up to you, but that's really one of the reasons when I found out about it, I thought it'd be interesting for the HRC to consider this as well.
Thank you for the background. I'm thrilled that you've approached the HRC, and and that the library has approached the HRC. Do we still have a motion?
We have a motion on the floor, yes.
Do we have a second?
Sorry, yeah, I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
One.
I'm going to abstain. I'm concerned there isn't enough diversity reflected in this proposal. You know, we have a very large Asian population. I saw nothing at all here that looked like it would appeal to the Chinese community, the Korean community, even the Indian community. I mean, I'm just a little concerned about whether we're thinking broadly enough. We keep talking about being inclusive and diverse, but I didn't see that represented. And I know you're still in the planning stages, but I would need to see more before I would jump on board.
I see.
I think when you're considering the grant proposal, be specifically put the points in there. You want every ethnic group
Right, correct.
included.
Yeah, and I think the library's programs are not exclusive to any one group as well, so we're kind of, going along those lines, that we're trying to make the most accessible that would help the broadest majority of people in our community.
And it may take some extra effort to reach out to the Asian community because most Asians are quiet, so you have to be able to do more work on that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did say, I detect you have a Japanese last name, so I'm assuming you've got some Japanese heritage in your family. But, in Asia, art is seen differently. A beautiful arrangement of flowers is art in Japan, right? So I really want to make sure that we're thinking in that type of broad frame because, what's art to the West or in Europe or to a Spanish artist or an Iranian artist would not maybe be culturally accessible to some of our residents.
Right.
So I really want to make sure we're tapping into our own local roots.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I just also want to reiterate that the artists I presented here tonight are not fully on board. They're just artists that we've, had conversations with, and they would be interested in the project. And we'd also bring in a total of 4 artists who would be installing. So I'm sure that we would also make it a point to make sure that pool of artists would represent a diverse community as well. And we are serving a lot of Asian populations as well in all of our art classes and programs, so we are definitely aware of that.
I know the Art Center has an association with Hung Lu. Have you approached her?
I am not aware if we have approached her yet.
But that would
or
be an
not.
Asian artist.
Yeah,
that
definitely.
would-
Oh, most definitely. And we have exhibited her artwork in past exhibitions as well, so that would be a good place to also talk with.
Well, I will work with staff to determine what the letter of support should reflect, what would be useful.
Yeah.
And take your comment into context that we have a particular interest in seeing the diversity of Palo Alto reflected in the selection criteria and in the artists that are shown. Thank you.
Great.
And I think it's great work.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone.
And moving on to item 4, looking at our priorities for the year. I want to step back a second. We focus so much on the new activities. We focused so much on new activities during the retreat that we didn't have time to talk about ongoing activities. And I'd like to begin our discussion by just refreshing our minds about the things that are going on. We still have Being Different Together, taking the conversation deeper. We promised the community that we would do a summary, to put together to package some of our learnings so that other community members could take that event forward. So that's something that's staff has committed to work on, and I will help them on that. One of the things that we talked about at leadership is following up on some of the subject area resources. We've had people come and talk to us about housing, and we've expressed interest. We've had people come and talk about transit, we've expressed interest. We've had ideas about recognizing different holidays, having a calendar of events. Let me describe what I'm thinking about when I say calendar of events. And actually, this is a response to something you've talked about, Commissioner Lee. Is there something the city can do for particular holidays? Pride Day, Martin Luther King Day, Juneteenth. Do we want to do lights on City Hall or put flags up to recognize holidays? And let me backtrack a little bit. So those are things I would like to discuss when we think about the activities we're going to take on for the year. And I'd also like to talk a little bit more about the work that we're doing as a committee to support the resolution from the council. We hinted at this during the retreat, but we hadn't gotten far enough to really talk about some of the programs that we want to take forward this year. We're focusing down now. We still have work to do in terms of an evaluation, but we're focusing on areas of immigration, gender identity, hate crimes, inclusive public engagement, citywide diversity learning, implicit bias, and gender. We're looking at policies that will ask the council to move forward, programs that we'll try to initiate with city staff, not just HRC, not just Human Services, but other city staff. And then what's relevant for our conversation are 4 programs that we might consider asking the HRC to take on. One would be an assessment of gender identity, working with the commissions in Mountain View and the county to do an assessment of the needs and assets of the LGBTQ community. So that's one program. We'd like to propose working with partners to expand the Welcoming American program. And we'd like to propose initiating a leadership training program for immigrants. We want to develop a strategy for becoming a CDAW city. So those are 4 programs that the committee is looking at continuing to evaluate to see if they make sense. And we'll be bringing them forward to you in October in a more formalized way. But I want to have that that grounding, so as we think about layering in new activities, the activities that we've started in the last fiscal year don't get lost in this fiscal year. Since we haven't discussed that before, there's probably some more elaboration that's required. But I want to move on to the work that we proposed at the retreat and have a discussion of those programs. I want to ask each of us to talk about the topics we expressed an interest in, and particularly to think about, is it something that's in the domain of the HRC? Is it something where we add value? And is it something we have the bandwidth to take forward? So maybe I'll start with DePauli and Steve.
And this refers to the document that staff sent out, just the proposal template to get you thinking about the types of questions to consider as you're looking to bring something forward as a focus area or focus project for the HRC this year.
Yeah, I think Stephen and I, we did a good job with all the 3 assigned to us. We are well prepared. So
I
Stephen,
have
you want-
no doubt, I am sure, new energy, we're going to take advantage of it. I'm just taking these in the order that they were written.
So, for the online cyberbullying, our thoughts were sort of as an initial step, we could, October is sort of cyberbullying month, and maybe using that as an opportunity to kick off a conversation with sort of experts in that field. So, folks like psychologists, administrators, leaders in tech, and just sort of get their thoughts on the sort of emerging phenomenon of online cyberbullying, and sort of get their thoughts on what the problem is and what might be possible ways for local government to be part of the solution. I don't think at this point in time we have a clear sense of what that involvement would look like, but sort of as an initial starting point, just having that conversation with the various stakeholders. Given how close we are to, we literally are Silicon Valley, I think this is a very poignant topic, and one that we can have a very important role in facilitating. Was there anything that you wanted to add to Palo about this particular?
Yeah, we also wanted to request comments or feedback from the citizens of Palo Alto of personal incidents where they face a certain issue. So taking what the experts are saying about online social behavior, impact of that on the brain, and then connecting with actual incidents, and taking learnings from those two to kind of propose I don't know whether we could really solve the problem, but something that would make it better, a solution that would help. I think this would also impact some of the high profile citizens may have also experienced some of the cyberbullying incidents. So
Are you suggesting that as an ad hoc subcommittee, that you do this research and bring it back to the HRC? Or are you suggesting that these speakers that you've mentioned come and speak at an HRC meeting?
It could work either way. Wanted to get thoughts of the commission. I mean, I think certainly as a committee we could meet with a panel of these folks to get that research done and present it to the commission in a more condensed version. I don't know what our October schedule looks like, but if we could do it in October.
I think that remains a question. That makes me choke a little bit. So we have a lot in October. I understand the timing. And I also think about our bandwidth. I'm saying our bandwidth, your bandwidth, to get a survey done and get interviews accomplished by October.
Well, I think we were thinking of more of just inviting, 3 to 5 experts to meet with Palo and myself, and we just have a free-ranging conversation on the issue, so do some general fact-finding that way. I don't think we were planning on doing a survey or something more extensive than that, at least as an initial starting point.
Was there a survey of community members? Did I misunderstand?
I would think before it got to a survey of community members, there'd have to be a lot more definition and understanding and buy-in of the whole HRC of the project to get a scope and size, because I think we're at this point what the chair is looking for is just more of a definition of the projects that the commissioners are suggesting, and then making a decision, is this something the full HRC wants to commission you to go forward with, and then set up, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this. I think if it's something as simple as in inviting speakers to talk about a topic, we definitely do. We call a variety of speakers to call and talk about a topic, but before I think there's a full clearinghouse to do any kind of deep community survey, I don't think that's that would be up to the will of the rest of the, HRC to be in dialogue with you about.
And so, excuse me, what is the definition, the goal of what you want to achieve by doing so? Let's set a goal first, and then we know what to do.
I mean, I think that the goal is to identify sort of what is kind of fueling online cyberbullying, and what can we do as a community to reduce it.
So how do we know? What it needs some sort of a in-depth, research, and then maybe some academic research, statistics. I don't know. It turned out to be a very large project.
Yeah.
In my mind.
So I think initially that's why we wanted to meet with some experts to get a sense of.
So subcommittees can meet with the experts and then get information from them, and you guys can present in our HRC meeting.
Sure,
Is that the idea?
Yeah, I think that's what we can do.
And then we decide what to do next.
Yeah.
Do we know what the state of cyberbullying is in our community?
We have no idea. I have no idea.
No, I have heard incidents from, people like personal, people who have shared their experiences, about their
So that's why
daughter
the
being on
survey is
Google
good.
Hangout, or, something like, fear to go to school because of something that happened. So I've heard those kind of, so that's why I was saying, like, part of it could also be experiences from the city of, people who have actually faced those issues, and see how we could help them get better.
A baseline question now.
Yeah.
The baseline is to do a survey, see how many people get involved.
I've heard a couple words that I really like. One you used was awareness of a campaign, and that's consistent with our mission. We might not be solving it or addressing it, but just increasing awareness. And I'm sorry, Commissioner Lee, you said something that really struck home. Oh, to do an assessment to see if it's something we want to explore, to interview people and get a lay of the expertise that's available to us, and then decide if it's something we should pursue further.
Yeah, I mean, I think Commissioner Palo and I thought that was a good starting point, is just to meet with folks who specialize in this sort of thing, and
That's
then
right.
we don't have
Yeah, that's good.
a concrete proposal at this point in time.
Are you looking at adult or student communities in your mind?
Both adult and student, yeah.
And I would imagine that one of the things that we would want to look into is to what extent are folks doing things addressed to the youth community, and we don't want to duplicate what's already being done there, and really see how can we complement or fill in any gaps in terms of this issue.
Yeah, we would
Yeah.
meet and research like what's happening on that side from the school committees, and
I wonder if there's anything in Project Safety Net. Is there any aspect of that? Do you know? Related to cyberbullying and any connection between teens feeling marginalized or ostracized?
There definitely is a connection. I mean, there'd be contacts within Project
That might
Safety
be.
Net
Yeah.
that you can talk to.
That seems really interesting to me, but I might ask the committee to focus on what we can add value to. And it seems like the adult community might be something that is less covered, and where we would really add if your research, your interviews suggested to you that there was some direction for the city, I would suspect that the adult population is less well covered by the school district and the different agencies that work with youth. And it might be a more fruitful use of your time, if that was your interest.
So, how do you get this expert on cyberbullying? Do you know the experts in the area? Who does that?
Yeah, so I have researched that. I think there are experts at Stanford who have researched how the effects of different social media on the brain, and how different. So I think we are like a very rich community, and we have like access to great resources like very nearby. So yeah, yeah, we would finalize. Like I still need to. It was just more of a preliminary thing that I looked at.
So I wanted to get some clarification. Since the first time I've been on the commission when we were starting new initiatives, it's not quite clear to me sort of what the process is and sort of what each of the ad hoc committees should be doing, at least initially, and what we need to bring back to the commission. So before we continue the discussion, if we could get some clarity as to the process, just so that we can be a bit more structured in our approach.
I think that was the purpose of this sheet,
Yeah.
just to be able to say, you had an idea, it's something you were passionate about. Let's take that passion for the idea just to run through a series of questions that you're able to present to the full HRC to say, this is what we're planning on doing, this is what we've considered, this is, what approach we're thinking, this is who we think we're going to reach. And then open it up for maybe just have that presentation, kind of answer some questions from the full HRC about that, and then say, okay, and someone else makes their presentation. So we have 4 presentations or 4 ideas that are out there, and then look at the full scope of the work plan for the HRC, see what the abilities of the commission are to take on. If a commissioner, if the HRC says, yes, we think that's great, go for it. If you're doing 2 other projects and you're willing to take on a 3rd, that's wonderful. I think it was just the concern is just looking at what's on the HRC's plate and you all making the decision. It's not staff's decision. It's your decision to say, okay, this is what we're able to take on. Now, if it involves staff, if it's going to be 10 public forums that staff has to support, then we'll probably have an opinion about that. But if this is projects that you're doing the research for, then it's the will of you and your colleagues to see what is feasible. I think this was just used as a mechanism to help you think about it a little bit more and have it kind of be a level playing field for people bringing a proposal saying, hey, I've done this work, and get everybody getting the same type of information about the different proposals, and then the commission being able to make a decision.
Well, so for speaking for myself personally, I feel like I'm not at a stage yet where I can propose, a concrete project proposal. I know we discussed sort of the general topics and been sort of thinking about it since the last meeting, and so I personally would prefer some additional time to get some more thoughts so that we can actually come with a fully filled out sheet. I mean, we tried to do it before the meeting, but it's sort of very rough at this point in time. We haven't done the initial fact
And that makes complete
finding.
sense if you just suggested it last
Yeah.
time and you're looking at this. I think, it would be a time for just, general feedback by your HRC colleagues. But yeah, I hear your point that, and your colleagues are probably at this point saying, oh, that really interests me, or oh, I have some concerns. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it next time a little bit more when you'd be able to look at it in a little more depth. I think as an HRC work plan, I think there's something that is to be said of starting out the year and saying, okay, as a commission, we're going to do these 4 things. Well, maybe this is something that your proposal is something that would come to fruition maybe in, January, February, March, because it's not at that level. You're still doing some thoughts about it. So not everything has to be decided by September or October. There's, like I said, you want to get certain things definitely decided upon it, our core issues and the others that you decide upon. But if it's not decided this time, it's, you can bring ideas throughout the year. I think the thought about kind of having idea about them now is for bandwidth.
Yeah, okay.
But I would like to say, apropos of this discussion, that as we are heading into a study session with council, I think we do have to start to sharpen up what we're going to be focusing on, because if we bring up ideas that we're still bouncing around, that may come up later as to like whatever happened with that, and then it's a little awkward to say, well, it didn't really have legs in the long term.
So I think thank you, Commissioner Nan. I think the HRC would be if this is something that is just at the point where you haven't developed that, I would say, you know, these are what we're starting out at the year, you know, we'll revisit some other ideas, you know, mid-year. But I think there is a point where if you mention 10 things and you do 2 things, then the council might give a little pause.
I think to use your word that this is a stage of investigation is totally appropriate
Okay.
for this project. And to keep bringing it back each month until you're ready to really say, do I have the sanction of the HRC to proceed? Is it something that interests people, they're willing to take on the work to help with? Makes sense. And I think your start gives me comfort. So, can we move on to teaching the history of racism?
Yeah, I think Shelley and I, we had that, and I discussed that with Stephen as well, because that was his original proposal. For that, we were thinking to have TED Talk or a presentation by a historian who would, starting with effects of being in group or out group and how it affects people, and going through time where different races have been considered out group and not American. For example, starting with Russians or, you know, Irish people, and then how they kind of assimilated, and so now they are considered very much American. Nobody questions, you know, so a Russian or something. So now I think the Muslim group is facing that kind of a little bit of an out group kind of a issue. But when we go through time and then show snippets of how different groups face that issue, like the Japanese with the, you know, Hiroshima, Nagasaki time frame, right, and then the Chinese, and so then have a historian talk about those issues at different forums and educate them about the history of racism. And yeah.
I think the idea is really using people's own sense of identity right now, especially if they're sort of in the in-group, and give them some historical context as to when it may have been, when they were in the out-group, when that identity, so that, you know, even if they're in the majority or in-group now, they can have empathy or for those who are sort of in the current out-group. So I thought that might be an interesting way of
yeah, I mean, for this, I think we would need a really good historian who, you know, who could bring up some interesting facts and like prepare like a slide deck or something. I mean, we would work with that person, but you know, we didn't know like how is it, like does the commission sponsor some amount to, you know, to kind of like hire somebody to do like a program like this, or no?
We don't have a lot of money.
Oh, okay.
I would say the commission in and of itself doesn't have money. Mary and my little operation does have some funding, but and we have been able to support HRC events in the past. So that just gives, if this is a project you go forward through, we just have to see how the year runs and how the other events, and be able to make that consideration. So it isn't that we don't have any funding, but there's not a budget specifically for HRC events that
invite speakers.
I wanted to mention that this might be a topic where we don't have to really reinvent the wheel, because we have wonderful Stanford University over here teaching things like the history of racism in politics and so forth. And we actually would need, I think, from what you're describing, an anthropologist as well as a historian to talk about how human groups relate to each other, as well as the history of those groups. So this might be an opportunity for the people on this subcommittee to reach out to contacts at Stanford and see if we can maybe sponsor a Stanford-related event for Palo Altans. You know, we often don't take advantage of this potential partnership that we could have with the university. So this could be something really interesting and exciting. And I know, because I'm a Stanford employee, that they would like to be more active in the community, but often feel like it's difficult to get into Palo Alto, and they don't always really know what's going on in Palo Alto. We're sort of side by side, but living in different bubbles. So this could be a real opportunity to take some of the heavy lifting off of the HRC, maybe leverage resources that the university has, but provide a forum, provide a place, do the marketing, and make it very inviting. And I think a lot of people in Palo Alto would be very interested. So think about tapping into that.
Yeah, I think that was precisely our thought, was really leveraging the resources at Stanford. Perhaps we come up with the specific topic or the spin on the topic of something that someone already does research on or speaks about, and presenting a forum for them to do so. So definitely.
I think those are good suggestions for resources. Another idea might be partnership. Looking at the work that we've been doing on the council resolution, the library has been interested in doing programs of racism and might be able to be interested in working with you on this particular topic. It might even be that something can be done with the children's theater. They do, was it a big read program?
Oh, that was a grant they had. I actually looked into it. They haven't had the grant in a couple of years, but I know.
But I think there are other departments in the city, in the arts department particularly, and the library, where there'd be some interest in collaborating and giving some breadth to the depth of the program that you're suggesting. So I would like to encourage you to continue to look at that. Would you be? So the next was a discussion of On the Table. We had a speaker from Silicon Valley Community Foundation speak to us, I think in July, about On the Table. And I think most of you remember that there's one day in November when they will sponsor different discussion groups, dinners, coffees throughout the city. And our suggestion is that the HRC can add some value by including our grantees, our HISRAP and CDBG grantees, to participate in these community discussions on housing. I remember Commissioner Onan had said last time that Palo Alto has sponsored programs in the past about housing, and there was a good chance for people to speak about how they felt, but there wasn't really a lot of action taken. And I think the difference this time would be that we have a chance to tailor questions to have a more productive conversation with people. And I think the HRC would miss an opportunity if we didn't participate in the city's program. So I'd like to encourage us to do that.
And just an update, the city staff has met about this, so the city will also be hosting several conversations. We are working on asking questions that are very specific and applicable to Palo Alto, and not just asking some general county question, but asking something that the city would really, questions about housing the city would find very interesting and possibly actionable in upcoming conversations about housing. So I know that the city is working on hosting some of these, and they were very glad that the HRC was considering doing so as well. And really looking at the value added of the conversations that the city hosts, be with audiences that maybe some of the regular city conversations don't reach. So as Chair Stinger has mentioned, either with our HISRAP grantees, either with just the clientele of one of our HISRAP grantees. So that would be the real value added of hearing that voice at the table, on the table.
So do we remember what day? Is it November 10th?
It is November 15th.
Okay. I was trying to look it up and I can't find it.
I have one of these. if you-
Yeah, I need one of those.
I think it's, well, when we get to that, I don't think we want to get into those specifics tonight, but it would be that if this, something that the HRC goes forward with, that there'd be some kind of ad hoc subcommittee that would work to, there's going to be a framework to all of this, but then they would, set up the time, set up the audience, provide the facilitator and the note taker at one or multiple locations on the 15th. So,
No, I'm asking this just to clarify how much work we have to involve. If we have to go inviting the audience, it's a lot of work.
It's,
you would have to work with staff to help plan the event. I mean, my hope is if it's inviting an audience, you've chosen a sector. So maybe you're meeting with the clients at the Vista Center. I'm just mentioning something off the top of my head. Then you would work with a partner to say, this is really what we're trying to accomplish. Do you think this is a conversation that your clients would be interested? Can we come and can we facilitate a conversation with your clients?
So,
we're not trying to get
individuals
from a whole
group.
I think that would be much too difficult. So we're really,
I had that experience before.
we're really looking at, what the questions turn out to be, really what demographic could be a value added to help the city move forward in that area.
Thank you.
so the venue or the environment would be like a coffee with coffee and donuts or lunch. We wouldn't be having an audience forum.
We'll have a table,
Right.
about 10 or 12 people, right?
Correct.
And those people are from organizations, specific population that city has set up for us.
That we would set up.
You would set up in collaboration
with
with Mary and myself. So the city
Okay.
in general, they'll be working on setting up their own.
Okay.
If different.
All right.
So they would look to the HRC to work with human services
Okay.
staff to work out the
Right,
logistics
right.
for
It
the
just-
one they're planning.
Literally, that we have to seek that population ourselves, to bring it up to Minka and Mary to set it up. That is not very easy to do.
Fair enough.
Again, I think it really depends. If you're looking, if there's a weekly meeting of homeless service providers and we go to their weekly meeting and get their feedback, I think that's going to be a lot easier than just sending out announcements and
having to come
hoping someone shows up. And it would be my idea to do the prior to make it easier.
And more specific, okay. We had an idea to host a community dinner. Did you want to elaborate, Commissioner Chen, Commissioner Ryan?
Well, I'll start. My colleague Mehdi Al-Hassani brought this idea up originally last year. I think part of the genesis of it was that for 20 years the White House hosted what's called an iftar dinner, which was held during Ramadan. And this past year, I don't even like to say his name, President, who, didn't do it for the first time in 20 years. And it was really, I felt like a slap in the face. And my colleague brought this to our attention and was suggesting perhaps the HRC could sponsor a community dinner here in Palo Alto. Because of timing issues and new babies coming and so forth, it didn't quite work out. But I really loved the idea. And so while Mehdi was on paternity leave, I did make a few forays into kind of exploring this issue. And one idea that I have is to have a Middle Eastern theater troupe called Golden Thread, which is based in San Francisco, come and do a performance piece for us. They do all kinds of Middle Eastern related themes, and they even act out children's fairy tales. So we can make it a very lovely, I think, family-oriented event. And then I think our issue, and I'll turn it back to Mehdi in a second, would be, do we still want to do kind of the iftar theme, which would mean I think we'd be pushing it out till June of next year. Do we want to just pick a time that works for us as an HRC to give us plenty of time to publicize and host, and kind of going back to, do we want to go back to the original idea, or have we kind of gone past that now? And do we want to, how do we want to partner with other people, and how broad a net do we want to cast? So let me turn it back to Mehdi.
Sure, thanks, Commissioner Onan. The only thing I would add to that is the goal is actually, I'd almost broaden it a little bit, that like, I think frankly what you've heard in today's meeting between the Baha'i celebration, the New American Artist Grant Proposal, the student talking about stereotypes of Indian Americans, I think there's like a hunger in Palo Alto to protect, protect like our pluralistic community, but also like continue getting better at it. And so what my ideal scenario was to actually broaden this and make it a series of dinners, kind of talking about diversity, and maybe at one point we do something around iftar dinner, and another dinner is something, maybe it's Baha'i events, for example. But to basically have a kind of a series of learning about our diverse community, and Commissioner Ona had sent me this theater group that she was familiar with, and I thought they were very good, and might be, I think, welcomed here.
So my thought too is, I love the idea of doing a continuing series of dinners, although again, that would depend on our bandwidth, because as Commissioner Chen has pointed out now several times, it's not always easy to do all this event planning. But I guess I'm particularly concerned about reaching out on behalf of the Muslim community, because that is, I think, our targeted community of the moment that's been under tremendous fire at all levels of government and even culturally right now. So to me, the tremendous response there was to Supervisor Samidian's series, education series on Muslim culture and customs was so overwhelming and so positively received in Palo Alto that I do feel our community would welcome a chance to have a Muslim or Middle Eastern themed event, with the dinner and possibly the theater troupe performing. And from there, maybe we could build out and reach out, maybe do an Asian, Chinese American or Asian themed group. We could reach out to the Jewish community as well, and just share, Indian community, and share our cultural traditions and food with each other, and really kind of, walk the walk instead of just talking the talk about inclusion and diversity. Just really share with each other. I think it's a very lovely way for people to truly experience a culture, even if it's just for an evening, versus seeing people but not really knowing them, or hearing things or reading things in the news but never really connecting, at a more intimate level.
It's a very good idea, but my question is, so what are the detailed planning? Are we going to invite the whole community? Or are we going to invite a few people, or the leaders of community? Because it's going to be involve the whole community. How we can handle the situation?
Yeah.
Logistics.
Yeah, I think that it would depend if we had our theater troupe perform, we would have to find a performance space and enough room. We would have to have some kind of registration system, because we can only hold so many people. We may have to decide if we want it to be a potluck, or whether, we have enough budget to provide some of the food, or ask people to bring a signature dish from their culture to share, or, we have to really think about all those things.
Yeah, the details is just, have to think about ahead of time so we can plan.
Right.
I had two minor points. One is I've seen that theater company, and I think that's a great invitation. I think they would be a different kind of keynote, and a refreshing keynote to a community dinner. And the other piece is, when you mentioned Samidian's series, that was well attended and it was well received. And at the end, there was some adversity in the audience that needed to be addressed, and I think that just emphasizes that we're not there yet. We still have more work to do. And if we can help move that familiarity and that discussion forward, I think it would be a continuation of what we've started to do and what we want to do in the future. Would it be fair to ask you to flesh out a proposal?
Yes, as I said, I've just had a very brief preliminary meeting with Golden Thread, just to see if they're on board at all. They love the idea of coming here and performing and getting themselves known in Palo Alto. They're very willing to come down. they will probably charge something because it's a big deal for them to transport their cast and all their equipment down here. So there's budget, and we're going to have to talk about that. But a lot of this I would, really want to kind of let Mehdi take the helm on again. This was originally his idea, and I want to make sure we realize, his vision for whatever we do. So I kind of would want to partner with him and with with Vice Chair Chen, and really come up with something that's solid and bring it back to the HRC and hammer out all these issues that we've been discussing, because there is a fairly large amount of logistical planning that we'd have to come up with.
Yeah, the detailed planning is important.
Yeah, I was maybe the three of us, we can meet offline between now and October 12th, and we can commit to coming up with a fleshed out proposal at October 12th meeting, if that's okay.
I would welcome the elaboration. I think it'll be strong. I'm sure it will be.
CDAW. Did you want to? Sure. So I think most people know that CDAW stands for Convention for Eliminating All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. It's been ratified by a number of countries, but not in the U.S. So an organization formed called Cities for CDAW. And they approached us. Valerie and I met with them originally, and then Stephen and I met with a broader group of CDAW advocates, and they are urging the city of Palo Alto to adopt an ordinance. So in 2002, the city passed a resolution, but it's not an ordinance, so it doesn't have, there's not like policies and programs in place. And so where we are is, and feel free to jump in, but basically where we are is, in order to even be on the mat for developing an ordinance, we have to do a gender analysis. So that would be the first thing. So you conduct a gender analysis. We have to find out what that means. What have cities done in that vein? What does it look like to do a gender analysis? And then out of that, that would basically determine or drive the policies and programs that we would recommend. So the stage we're in now is we need to basically, we have a list of cities that are example, cities that have CDAW ordinances and are good examples. So Stephen and I are going to basically sort of divide and conquer and contact some of those cities, find out what they're doing. And, we had a meeting the other day as part of the council resolution, and basically there's like the basic, what would be the basic ordinance that the city could pass that would qualify us as, that would designate us as a CDAW city? And then what's kind of like the gold plan? What are other interesting things that cities have done that we might add to it? So we're sort of, I guess in my mind, and Stephen, please feel free to weigh in, but in my mind, we would be giving them sort of the basic plan and then more kind of plan with more options based on what other cities have done successfully. And
so I think we're still in the investigative stage where we're going to be reaching out to the other cities, find out what they did, and then we'll kind of brainstorm what we think might work for Palo Alto in terms of a basic version versus a gold plan, and then we'll come back to the commission and present.
Yeah, I mean our goal is to do that in October, so that's actually one of the things we are hoping to be able to do, is to come up with some kind of outline, or here's what we discovered, here's our
Right. So for clarity, that they would bring back information. They wouldn't actually be performing this gender analysis.
No.
What they're doing is they're giving the background information, so if the HRC feels like they want to pass that on to the council as part of what the HRC would like the council to consider as far as a response to the resolution. And then if that's something that the council so chooses, and they feel there's the staff capacity to, that's not just Mary and I, this gender analysis, that's our HR and that, then they would have to make that decision that is something that they wanted to commit staff resources to. So the HRC's role, and what these two have dedicated their time to, is really looking at, well, what does it mean? What's involved? And then, in a way, presenting that to the council, say it could look like this, it could look like that, we're in favor of the concept, what do you think? So it's information gathering and then presenting to you, which presents to council, which would then give staff the authorization to do whatever this investigative work is, which will then eventually go back to the council, if that makes sense.
And conceivably, one possible scenario is that the HRC might be involved in any sort of execution or implementation, possibly. I mean,
Right, if
yeah,
one of the
yeah.
programs is HRC related, or if the council decides to explore this option, it might say, well, HRC, could you do that aspect of it?
Yeah,
Staff, you
yeah.
do this, and so forth. I think at this point, myself as staff, I'm, relying on you to come back with that information so I have a greater understanding of, possible staff impact.
So may I ask, what is gender analysis? I don't understand.
I think they're trying to figure out what
We are.
exactly
I mean,
they mean by that.
Here's an example. One of the things we heard was that, and I don't know, I'm just the messenger here, but we were told that when the city sends out bids, it doesn't always consider women-owned businesses, or women contractors, female, women-owned businesses. So we would identify sort of those gaps or those things that are missing. How that all gets, sort of implemented, we're not sure.
Right.
That's part
And
of our
you don't
research.
know that at this point, but that's what some of the other cities.
That's some of the feedback that we've heard.
Some of the cities have
And
looked
the ordinance, I think we should make it clear that an ordinance can't happen without this analysis. That's what we understand from the CDOS cities, that you have to do that in order to say, all right, now we'll pass an ordinance. So you can't pass an ordinance without the analysis.
Well, I think there are two ways to do it. You could do the analysis first and then build an ordinance around what you discover in the analysis, or you could pass an ordinance that authorizes an analysis, and then you sort of do
You can't bypass the analysis.
establish an oversight committee to implement it or whatnot. So there's different ways to do it, but yeah.
I think the council would be very interested in your analysis, if the HRC decides to bring this forward, not just what is required initially, but what is required ongoing, because if they would consider
Like
that.
if it has to be an annual thing? Is that
If
what
it
you're
has
saying?
to be an annual, if there has to be certain staff time ongoing attached to it, if there's a certain report or reporting that is required as part of it, they would want to know all of that
Definitely.
in their deliberation process.
And I think the commission would also want to know that, because we'd want to make sure that we made a sound proposal
Yep.
to the council to say, this is the symbolic benefit, this is the actual benefit, and this is what it's going to cost us in time and effort to do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do all this by October.
But I think it's more important that it be done right.
So I guess we should talk about this.
Yeah.
I think since we've set up a category of investigation, this is,
Yeah. I mean, we can certainly provide an update in October, but I don't think we will have a proposal
yeah.
for the commission to consider
Makes
by
sense.
October.
If you did, I don't know that we would believe it. Well-rounded. There was one other topic that was discussed at the retreat, and that was diversity in tech.
So this was an issue that DePauli and I had discussed before the meeting. I think we're still sort of in the investigative stage at this point, but some things that we are considering is whether there should be some sort of tracking mechanism so that we can see how Palo Alto and the employers in Palo Alto are doing in terms of diversity. A lot of companies already provide a diversity report of some sorts, but obviously that's not all-encompassing. So seeing to what extent can we track how we're doing is one thing we'd be interested in possibly doing. Another thing is acting as sort of a convener of sorts of the various diversity officers or folks in charge of diversity programs at various employers in Palo Alto, to bring them together to collaborate, share best practices, and again, just act sort of as a convener of these various initiatives going on in Palo Alto. But that's sort of as far as we have thought it through so far, so we'll continue thinking about it and brainstorming ideas and provide some additional updates at next month's meeting.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I think for both of those, I think about what's our role as an HRC and what do we have the authority and the,
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things we would consider is to what extent can local government play a role in this issue, and if so, what does that look like? So.
would you consider looking at partnerships with groups like the Chamber of Commerce?
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
I think that would be interesting. Well, when we listed these topics at the retreat, I didn't think there would be as much progress made as we've talked to tonight. I think the history of racism and on the table are things that we can go forward with. We have some elaboration to do on hosting the community dinner and some more investigation on cyberbullying, online cyberbullying, CEDAW, and diversity in tech. I think if we combine that with the work that we're carrying over from the past year, we have more than a full plate. I think in our October meeting, maybe we ought to look at which ones we actually really want to go forward with. Does that make sense?
Exactly, that I totally agree about. I would like to remind everyone, the commissioners, that we follow this table and try to fill out. I learned it from our chair, and she always has it, so I would follow her. So, just, it does keep me thinking about it more in detail when I follow this.
Yeah, I mean, I think Stephen has the digital copy. We didn't.
Yeah.
So we didn't fill it out.
Okay.
He's not old school like the rest of us.
Yeah, we're here.
No, Dipali and I went through and tried to create these
Yeah.
worksheets earlier before the meeting, and I think filling them out, we realized that we were still sort of in the investigative stage, which is why we couldn't
okay.
really flesh it out on paper
Okay.
just yet. So it was a good exercise.
Well, that's good, because this is, when you asked it initially, what is the process? The process, that's an active word. We're experimenting with process. This is the first time we've had this many demands on our time. And so there's a little tentativeness in how we focus on the ones that we're actually going to carry forward. And I think to investigate a little bit further will put us in good stead. So I think just in terms
Could
of...
I ask a quick question on,
Yeah.
about on the table? I think at the last meeting we had discussed maybe involving the planning commission with that. Do you happen to know if they are planning on doing their own on the table?
Yes, the planning director is part of the city committee, and I passed on the HRC's desire that the planning commission will also hold one, and she will be bringing that
great.
to them.
Okay.
Any commissioner reports?
I would like to make a report. For those of you who don't know, I'm actually leaving the commission. So my last meeting is in October. I'm actually moving to Arizona. So I realize that's kind of like, what? But anyway, I just wanted to, that's my report. But I wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to be on the commission. And it's hard to go, but I'm going to look into the commission, HRC. Mika's already done my background homework for me to where I'm moving, which is Mesa, Arizona. So we're planning to move the end of October. We've sold our condo, and so thank you.
Well, I knew that was coming, so I can't say I'm surprised, but I can say I'm very sad. We'll miss you very much.
Yeah, agreed.
On a professional and a social level. It's a big loss.
I have a brief commissioner report. So I'm happy to say that our new council buddy system, I have already scored my first meeting with my council buddy,
Wow.
which in the past has been very difficult to do, but
Yes.
but I'm actually council buddies with our liaison, Lydia Koo, and we have already met and had a really great, very productive conversation, and looking forward to meeting with her again. So I hope all of you have similar success with your council buddies, but do, take the initiative and reach out and try to connect.
Oh, have to report, I saw Liz in my neighborhood walking. So I said hello to her, and she said, well, we have coffee sometime. But we haven't had a chance yet. Yeah. All right. But I do have a report regarding the email sent by Mary, like a couple of days yesterday. It's about this Asian Pacific Island American Public Affairs Association, Silicon Valley chapter. They have a forum, Civic Leadership Forum, on October 14th. I cannot be there. I really want to be here, but I'll be on my flight to Boston. I can't be here. So I wish, every commissioner, please go to that meeting, learn something about them, see they get very good speakers, and we should,
Where's it going to be?
Where it's going to be, there's a flyer, I'm not sure. In Palo Alto.
It's very local.
Yeah, it is by invitation only.
I think it was the golf
So,
club
you-
that they.
Do we have to crash the party?
Yeah, go for it. Wine tasting and discussion.
My commissioner report is that I attended the ILG, Institute of Local Government, meeting with Minka and 2 other staff members. And there aren't very many benefits to being on the commission, but one of them is you get invited to great meetings. And this was a really well-done meeting. They presented a lot of data on the economic importance of immigrants in the community. They presented different ways of reaching out to the immigrant community, and some of them are lessons that we'll probably try to institute in the year, working with partners to do a leadership academy for non-English speakers,
Yeah.
which the mayor and vice mayor were interested in independently. And they just had a wealth of ideas, so I was really appreciative. Thank you for including us. Our council liaison isn't here. Staff liaison report?
I just wanted to do a couple reminders. This Saturday is the Commissioner Recognition event. Commissioner Gordon Gray, Commissioner Lee, and former Commissioner Stone have RSVP'd. Are there other commissioners that are able to make it Saturday, 2:15 to 3:45, Mitchell Park Bowl?
Yes, I'm going, and I did tell David Carnahan that I'd be there.
I'm sorry to hear that. I will
I think
confirm.
I
I can be there too.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
I told him too.
Okay, well,
And I will be there also.
so who cannot make it?
I'm 50/50.
Okay.
We'll share the,
Is it going to be food?
There will be food, and there might even be an appreciation gift.
We can mobilize.
Okay.
I think there's going to be ice cream, right? Like it's an ice cream social, right?
It's an ice cream social.
Oh, there'll be an ice cream social. Okay.
I'm definitely going to be there.
Okay. So that is one. A reminder that next Monday night, 6 o'clock, is a proclamation in honor of the service of former Commissioners Savage and Stone. It is first on the agenda. There is a study session on another matter from 6 to 7, so granted that they get out on time. It is special orders today, so if you are able to make it, I passed on Vice Chair Chen's regrets to our former commissioners, but if you are able to make it, the whole process is 5 minutes long. So if you're able to make it, that would be wonderful. And the third item, of course, is our study session on October 2nd. And as that should be at 6 o'clock, if there, as that all becomes available, I will specifically send it out to you all.
Here, right, in the same room?
It will either be here or in chambers.
Okay.
Yes.
tentative.
Oh, and I have one more thing. So, I'm sorry, Chair Stinger, to interrupt you. So I created this little pocket guide for services to homeless individuals for another project that I'm working on. But if any of you just want to take a couple, or if you say you want to meet, if you need more, if you meet an unhoused person on the street, it does, or if it's just for your own knowledge, I will pass these out. And if I run out and there's not enough, I will create more. But again, I've given it to our homeless service providers. Some of them had their own. We collaborated on this, but if, just wanted to let you have this.
Agenda for October 12th. We have 3 items. An update from the Palo Alto Mediation Program.
CDOT progress report?
Definitely. His rep and council resolution update.
Would we need something specifically for on the table, given that it's November 15th?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, Chair, that since we're, our next meeting is immediately following our study session, should we include a debrief item on the study session?
Thank you. And I think not only a CEDAW update, certainly maybe more focus on that, but also updates on all the investigative projects.
Long meeting.
Yeah, I was going to say, everybody bring sleeping bags. We're not going to get into that habit. If there are no other items, we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
This looks pretty